In this lesson, we are going to start talking about adding and subtracting values, positives, negatives, make sure we're comfortable with it. So first thing is, let's make sure we kind of understand how it works when you have positives and negatives. And so we're going to be putting in, kind of comparing the two different numbers. So we're going to be putting in some symbols. So don't forget that this symbol is less than, and this symbol is greater than. Okay, so basically you're just asking a question and filling in an appropriate symbol. Is 7 less than or greater than 9? And it is less than. Is 0 less than or greater than -1? 0 is greater than -1. You can think of negatives as money. So is it better to have $0 or -$1? You owe money on that. So that works kind of nicely with this. -4 greater than or less than -2, it's actually less than, all right? And if you, again, you think of it as money, you're looking at -4, you owe $4 versus owing $2. If you need to, put it on a number line. So here's 1, 2, 3, and then negatives are over on this side. So -1, -2, -3, -4. And anything to the right is bigger than anything to the left. So if you're comparing -2 with -4, it's further to the right, which makes it greater than. Okay, so going back to this one, -4 is less than -2 because it's further to the left. Okay, -2 compared to 0, -2 is less than 0. All right. So within this, you're going to have some stuff that there's an operation, and it's called absolute value. We'll define it. The symbol for it is that. So you have some sort of a value inside of that. All right. So the idea of an absolute value okay, it's defined as a distance from 0. Okay, so if you're talking about a distance, you're never going to have a negative. That's the key, is that an absolute value is an operation. It's just like adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. It's an operation that makes everything positive. Okay, because it's a distance. So for example, the absolute value of 9 is 9. Reason is because the distance away from 0 on a number line, so 0 to 9 is 9, the distance. So the absolute value of a +9 is +9. The absolute value of a -4 is a +4. Right? It makes everything positive because it's a distance. So if you're on a number line, what's the distance from -4 to 0? It'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. The direction doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Okay, so it's a positive. So that's a little bit of absolute value. It kind of get thrown into the mix as things move on. An additive inverse is a fancy version of, is a number that's also the opposite. All right, so a fancy name just in case it pops up, but opposite is, we want to find the opposite of each number. So if you have a -8, the opposite is +8. +6, the opposite is -6. Okay, you're switching the sign. Okay, a fancy word is additive inverse, but in general, opposite is you're just switching the sign. The opposite of 0 is 0 because there is no positive and negative of 0. All right, so why does that exist? Because if you're going to add some numbers together, there is something that, not so much on the adding, but this idea of an opposite is going to help us if we're going to be subtracting some numbers. But We'll get to that in a second. So if you add sign numbers with like signs, you really are just going to add them together. And then keep the sign. Okay, so we'll do a couple examples like that. So what does that mean? So if you're going to add the following together, so you're going to take negative 12 plus a negative 5, they're both negatives. So again, if you want to treat it like money, if you owe $12 and you owe negative $5, together you owe $17. So that's what they mean by you're just really going to add them together. You're putting 12 and 5 together, which makes 17, but both being negative, so you're just further into the negatives. And then here, you get a negative 3 plus a negative 4 plus a 1. So 3 and 4 makes 7, plus 1 is 8. And you are just adding a bunch of negatives together. So it's going to be negative 8. Okay. Added signs with unlike signs. So how do we do this? What I go about doing it, and there's a bunch of different ways to do it, is you're going to find the difference. Okay. And then I always ask, we're going to keep the sign of what you have more of. Okay. So for example, what is the difference between 7 and 12? The difference is 5. But you have more negatives than you do positives, so it'd be a negative 5. So the idea is that you had $7 and then you went in debt 12. So you still are in debt by 5 is one way to think of it. Another way is just what's the difference between the two numbers? Keep the sign of what you have more of. So here you have negative 5 and you have a positive 7. You have more positives than you do negatives, and you have more positives by 2. Because 2 is the difference. So let me reword that. This one over here is you have positive 7 and you have a negative 12. You have more negatives by 5 than you do positives. Okay. When you have a bunch of them together, sometimes it might be easier to kind of group things together. So you have an 8 and a 13. Those are your positives. And then you have a negative 9 plus a negative 15. And this is not the only way to do it, but sometimes this is an okay way, just to maybe never thought about doing it this way. So if we put these two together, the two positives, you get 21 positives and you get negative 24. So 24 negatives. You have more negatives by 3 than you do positives. That's why I like to kind of group it, because then I can really go back to that same strategy on anything. Okay. And then the last 3. So if we just kind of add things together, you're going to be mix and matching. Negative 2 plus 0, you're adding 0. It's not going to do anything. And then you have 5 plus a negative 5. Well, you don't have more positives or negatives. In fact, they cancel each other out. The negative 5 cancels away the positive 5. It's like you had $5, but you owed $5. Now you don't have anything. Okay. And then here you have, let me clump together again. So if I clump my negatives together, negative 2 and negative 5 make negative 7. Then I have 2 more negatives than I do positives, negative 2. Okay. That was adding values with different signs. And then the next thing is we'll start dealing with subtraction with them.